Work on NLNG Train 7 plant project in Bonny Island flagged off in Rivers State.
I think it just shows what is possible, and I'm glad to see that this is a Nigerian-made electric car.
First made in Nigeria electric car unveiled in Abuja.
FRSC National Traffic Radio Station inaugurated.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, our focus is on managing Nigeria's inflation.
Well, over time, Nigerian experts have suggested periodic reconstitution of a country's inflation basket to capture the rapidly changing consumption patterns of Nigerians.
In fact, the last revision of Nigeria's inflation basket was in 2009, leaving concerned persons with questions about the impact this gap could have on policy decision-making.
And indeed, available research has indicated that for many years, food prices have driven inflation in Nigeria, and this has increased steadily since the country's land borders were closed in August 2019, and the situation was further aggravated by currency pressure, insecurity, and a host of other factors.
Nigeria's annual inflation rose from 18.2% in April 2021 year-on-year, as well as month-on-month from 0.97% in April 2021. The National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, attributed this rise in food index to increase in prices of oil and fats, fish, fruits, soft drinks, milk, cheese, eggs, meat, vegetables, bread, cereals, as well as tea and cocoa.
Yes, Kurian, but the NBS, however, indicates that headline inflation dropped from 1.01% in May to 17%, rather 17.93%.
Recall that the country went into its recession in the third quarter of 2020 and exited this phase in the fourth quarter, with analysts still concerned that other factors are still fueling inflation.
And in the new Finance Act 2020, duties on tractors were reduced from 35% to 10%. There was also a reduction in duties on motor vehicles for transportation of goods to, 10%, as well as a reduction in levy on motor vehicles for transportation of persons from rather 25% to 5%.
These measures are expected to reduce domestic costs, though concerns are being raised over the challenge in accessing foreign exchange, as well as the hurdles encountered by exporters and manufacturers as the country's ports.
Now, how can Africa's largest economy manage factors triggering inflation? What immediate steps are necessary to plug all gaps fueling the current inflation? These issues inform our focus on managing inflation in Nigeria. And thank you for joining us. I am Yusuf Nadabu Usman, and Good Morning Nigeria.
And I am Kirin Maya, and join my colleague Yusuf in welcoming you to Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority and from the nation's capital here in Abuja. And we shall serve you, as usual, complimentary segments of newspaper review, business, and sports in the course of the program. For now, here is our colleague Musbao Danrahab with the morning news. Good morning, Musbao.
So very good morning, Kirian and Yusuf. Let's take the news. President Muhammadu Buhari has spoken of the need for countries in the West African sub-region and the Sahel bedeviled by challenges of security to team up and confront the menace. The president stated these while receiving the new special representative of the UN Secretary General for West Africa and the Sahel, Mohamed Saleh Hanadif. The federal government has promised to sustain efforts at boosting the development of Nigeria's abundant gas resources, strengthening the gas value chain, developing the much-needed infrastructure, and enhancing safety operations in the sector as outlined in the National Gas Policy of 2017. President Muhammadu Buhari, who made the promise, said the government is also determined to leverage on a decade of gas initiative to transform the country into a major gas and industrialized nation. This was during the virtual groundbreaking ceremony of NLNG Train 7 project in Bonny River State.
Of more gas projects by the international oil companies and the indigenous operators, and more trains from Nigeria LNG to harness the over 600 trillion cubic feet of proven gas reserves we are endowed with.
Now, the saying that road safety is everybody's business this Tuesday was further emphasized as the Federal Road Safety Corps added a national traffic radio station to its effort at ensuring that safety returns to the nation's highways. Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo, while performing the inauguration, says Nigerians will now be well informed on road traffic situation before or while traveling.
It can even be used to reach far-flung areas for teaching and dissemination of public health advisories and information. So I really think that the vision and the resourcefulness of the leadership of the FRSC ought to be commended.
Elsewhere, Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo Tuesday declared open a 5-day exhibition of made in Nigeria goods and services, describing the product as pride of the nation. The Vice President of the event has drove the first made in Nigeria electric car.
Fantastic drive and really smooth, really smooth. I think it just shows what is possible, and I'm glad to see that this is a Nigerian-made electric car, and you can literally charge it anywhere. So I think it's a very, very fantastic innovation and fantastic product. And I can tell you because I drove it.
Fantastic indeed, Mr. Vice President. Now moving on, the World Bank says it will continue to partner Nigeria to see through reforms that would propel growth and development in the country. The financial institution also advised on deeper fiscal and monetary policy engagements targeted at uplifting the poor and reducing costs to free resources for development.
Absorb the impact of that. And the immediate, most promising way of doing so would be to think about direct cash transfers not for everyone, but for the poorest Nigerians, the working class, low-income Nigerians who are feeling the pinch.
Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, says it will partner with its Gambian counterpart to strengthen macroeconomic policies and framework needed for development of the two countries. This was the fallout of a visit by delegation of Gambian Central Bank to CBN.
I think we can share ideas, we can share about how we can help ourselves. And whether we like it or not, we must put our foot forward first to help our country before expecting others to come help us. And that is a mantra that our president has adopted, and that is what we are following through on.
The recent investigative sitting by the House Other Committee on Status of the Nigerian Recovered Funds centered on whether or not the Office of a National Security Advisor should source money from the recovered funds and the recovery operation by the Nigeria Police Force.
Okay, so why did you refund? Why we returned the money? Because that company, as at that time, was under investigation. So he said the fact that they are under investigation, that we should return the money back to the Treasury. And that was what happened.
There will be transparency that will ensure that things that are wasted needs to be put together and turned into assets.
The Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, has confirmed 17 new cases of COVID-19 in just 3 states in the country. The states are Lagos with 13 new cases, Rivers 3, and Gombe with just a new case. With this development, Nigeria now has 167,095 confirmed cases of COVID-19, out of which 163,483 patients were treated and discharged, while 2,117 deaths have been recorded so far. That's the morning news for now. Good morning, Nigeria. We'll continue in just a moment with Kirian and Yusuf after this break.
Let's begin on the street of Lagos to find people that can sing. Let's give this show Voice of the Street.
Be like you done, they talk too much. Small talk, you done, they talk. Sister, say.
What happened? Oh boy, you done they do too talk. Small talk, you done they do too talk. Badass. Since it, if you get money, can't be you. They find the pity. Tell Odogu say we like to party. You gonna know that you gonna know that. Say. Hey. To watch amazing performances, you guys should tune in to The Voice Nigeria, connected by Airtel.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Helen Paul! Hello, madam. Would you like to join us on this mission? Yes, but how? Just one question for you. How do you keep your toilet clean?
I use regular detergent and bleach for washing and removing yellow stains. I have been using it for years.
Oh, madam. The regular detergents and bleach are used for washing clothes. To disinfect your toilet properly, you need Harpic 10X. It is specially made for germs and stains remover. Harpic sticker formula settles on stains and gives 10 times better cleaning compared to regular detergent and bleach.
Wow! Trust the Center Fresh Liquid Field Gum to refresh your confidence instantly. Center Fresh Liquid Field Gum. Trust the freshness.
Revision classes on television for students in secondary schools in English and mathematics will commence on the NTA. The revision classes will transmit Mondays to Fridays from 5 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. on the network service of the NTA. This is organized in preparation for the various national examinations and orders. This is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Education.
The much anticipated UEFA Euro 2021 is finally here. Can Portugal defend the title they won 4 years ago as they face world champions France, Europe giants Germany, Spain, Italy and England? Catch all the action via live transmission, in-depth studio analysis, fixtures, results, updates, and lots more on NTA, Africa's largest TV network. For sponsorship and advert placement, contact Bola on 08037044286 or Idris on 08034633644. This broadcast is proudly brought to you by NTA in partnership with Media Business Solutions, MBS Sports.
Well, it's still Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Up next is the business news with Kule Adeye.
Exhibitors at the ongoing Made in Nigeria Expo to mark Nigeria at 60 have expressed optimism that the country will experience unprecedented growth in the quest for local content development if more Nigerians patronize locally made goods and services. The expo, which is witnessing the display of various locally made products, continues till June 19 in Abuja.
Don't have to patronize foreign products. We are rich now, our culture is rich, our land is blessed, so we need to start encouraging Nigerian grown products. These products can compete anywhere in the world. We have good packaging, and the product inside, the content is superb. I'm sure of that.
Most things are being imported because we feel we don't have capacity to carry out what we actually do. So if we buy from ourselves and we have money to produce more, if we can produce more, it will improve the economy.
And to the details of Tuesday's tradings on the floor of the exchange. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeye.
Thank you, Kunle, for that business package. Up ahead is newspaper review.
Welcome, Bayo.
Thank you, Isunaga.
Good morning.
Good morning, Keria.
Yeah, Bayo. It's good to see you here again today.
Yes.
All right, now let's get started with the Nation newspaper. I guess you have the Punch there.
Oh, yes.
And let me get going with the newspaper, with the Nation here. Above the masthead, we have 3 stories there. One is on page 28, and that says, Delta, we are expecting 4.2 million pounds Ibori-linked loot. That's coming from the state government, I believe. And then on page 6, reps query whereabouts of seized $44 million. Answer, watches hands off. And on page 27, I've done my best for workers, says Nasarawa governor. And on page 31, COVID-19 vaccine first dose jabs resume. Now, below the masthead, we have the following stories. Lawyers turned cab drivers during just ended juice and strike. Details of that on page 28. APC explains Buhari's loans, PDP in crisis. That's the rider there. Crisis of confidence. Inflation, crippling economy, increasing poverty, says experts. That's the big story of the page, at the main page, the front page of the Nation newspaper. There's only one rider, and that is rate drops to 17.93%, and prices are increasing rapidly, severely impacting Nigerian households, says the World Bank. We have $10 billion NLGN Trend 7 project to push up gas production, still on page 5. And on page 6, Oshumbanjo test drives assembled in Nigeria electric car. And finally, on the page we have, that's on page 4, there's this story on soldiers arrest 73. Julian?
All right, now to the Punch newspaper. Above the nameplate of the Punch newspaper, inflation pushed 7 million Nigerians below poverty line. That's according to the World Bank. It's on page 25. Oshimbajo test rides locally assembled little car, says innovation fantastic. It's on page 11. NLNG Train 7. $10 billion investment begins. Buhari warns against delay. Details of that story is on page 25. How minister laundered $37 million through property deal. That's according to the EFCC chair. It's on page 11. Now, below the nameplate, and first the lead story this morning on the Punch newspaper, military bombards bandits in north central forests. With 3 riders, NAF bombed, killed 500 cows, 200 missing in Nasarawa, alleges Mayor Tiala. Reports of 1,000 cows killed unrealistic, according to NAF. Troops comb Katsina forest. All that on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. Of course, the photo story there is that of the newly inaugurated FRSC radio traffic station, or traffic radio station. That's the vice president there being interviewed by one of the presenters. All right, below that we have pastor kidnapped by Boko Haram 8 months ago, freed in Borno. It's on pages 4 and 5. Gunmen shoot stadium manager to death in Jos. It's on page 8. Troops stop 73 Nasarawa men going to Imo with 47 Okadas. That's on page 5. Other states frustrating our plans to reform our Almajiri system. That's on page 17. CEO absconds as forex firm allegedly defrauds 52 investors of 122 million naira. It's also captured on pages 4 and 5. Niger community residents raise 5 million motorcycles, free leaders' wives. Also on page 5. Let's begin by now.
Thank you. Let's start with the story from the Punch, where you talked about the Nigerian military and the police have taken the war to the hideouts of criminals, following the bombardment of bandits in their hideouts in the northwest, north central, and the northeast. This crackdown was ordered by President Muhammadu Buhari so that terrorists harassing farmers can be taken care of, so that farmers can begin to go to their farms. The Punch says that the army, the air force, and the police have attacked hideouts in Basari, Jibia, Damusa, Safana, Matazu, and troops of Operation Wildstroke are also flushing out armed headers and militia from hideouts in Benue, Nasarawa, and Taraba states. The operations in Sankera area, this is an area in Benue State, has now ensured that farmers can return home and begin to go back to their farms. There have been claims of the Cattle Breeders Association of Nigeria that there have been bombardments that have killed their cows. The Commissioner for Information, Culture and Tourism of Benue State, Mrs. Unguna Adingi, says no human life or cows were lost in the military operations at the boundary between Benue and Nasarawa. Meanwhile, the National Bureau of Statistics says inflation dropped by 0.19% in the month of May 2021, dropping from 18.2% of April to 17.93%. Urban inflation still rose by 18.51%, while rural inflation rose by 17.6%. The Director General of Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Dr. Moda Yusuf, identified insecurity, cost of transportation, energy cost, that is cost of power supply, and exchange rate depreciation among the drivers of inflation. And he says that to tackle inflation, there's a need to fix the supply side and the challenges identified, so that we can rein in also fiscal deficit. Meanwhile, the World Bank says that food prices accounted for over 60% of increase in inflation. It stressed that rising food prices have pushed estimated 7 million Nigerians below the poverty line in the year 2020. In a Nigeria development update, the World Bank spokesman, Mansur Nasir, said Nigeria's economy contracted by minus 1.8% instead of minus 3.2% that was forecast in 2020. He identified measures taken by government to protect the economy against the much dreaded recession as having worked and reduced the impact. Although the economy has started to grow again, he says price increases is impacting negatively on Nigerian households. The World Bank says that it will be essential to set policy foundations for a strong recovery. The World Bank says 7 million have been pushed down poverty in 2020, but But it may be recalled that on Democracy Day, President Muhammadu Buhari, in address, said 10 million Nigerians have been pulled out of poverty up to date. The other matter of concern is from the expressed by Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, and he says the social media blog platform suspended recently has formally written to Nigeria to seek dialogue. Alhaji Lai Mohammed reiterated that the government position was that government will not tolerate any platform that will be used to destabilize the country. He says that for them to resume, there must be an agreement as to what could be accepted as a post. All such other social media platforms must also register in Nigeria as an entity licensed by the National Broadcasting Commission, and they will be guided by the rules of licensing, and they will also pay taxes to Nigeria. The minister stressed that the regulation of the social media has become a practice that most countries are now waking up to. He cited instances that in France, an online was fined 200 million euros for violating online advertisement. And the United Kingdom, there is also an initiative to impose fine on online media for any abuses. Some nations that have done such include Singapore, Algeria, Pakistan, Turkey, and Australia. Even the European Union is also recommending a white paper on regulation of social media. We talked about the story of the electric car. Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo has described the made in Nigeria electric car as fantastic. He drove the locally assembled electric car named Kona at the Eagle Square yesterday. He says that it was a very good drive. I am glad that this is assembled in Nigeria. You can charge it anywhere. I think it's a very fantastic innovation, fantastic product, and I can tell because I just drove it. The Minister of Trade and Industry, Otumba Niyi Adebayo, and the Director General of Nigeria Automotive Development Council, Jelani Aliu, were in attendance. But there have been reactions. Trust Nigerians. Some says that while it is a great innovation, I suggest mass production of such vehicle. Another said, is it a good business idea to jettison the use of petrol vehicles when our main source of revenue is crude oil? Another says that, great one, let the federal government quickly make electricity stable in Nigeria. But the last one is a tongue-in-cheek. He says, to buy electric car, one would need a generator and fuel in the booth. Trust Nigerians.
Well, that's really serious. You know, that's taking a cue from what the Vice President said can be used anywhere in this country.
But again, they are using the opportunity to draw attention to our concerns about electricity being available everywhere.
It cannot be recharged anywhere. I mean, there has to be provision for recharging of electric cars. In other climes, there are designated points, for recharging. And this is another technology all the same, for you to be able to recharge the car that can take you to a longer distance. Because, of course, when you recharge and what to recharge discharges, then, of course, the car stops. All right, it's not like fuel. So you need to recharge at certain points, across the nation. That's how it's made elsewhere. There are points, recharging points, right? So if you're making
like filling stations,
exactly like filling stations. But the Vice President said by the time there is mass production, there will be charging points across in anticipation. You recall that there was a launch whereby there was a conversion of petrol cars to gas-using cars, and so that you can have cars that can be using petrol and gas as alternative sources of revenue, energy. This time around now, you have these electric cars. By the time they are mass produced, they will be charging points across the nation as a commercial sales point. And so all those things. But trust Nigerians.
If power is guaranteed,
yes.
If there's outage of power, you'll be able to recharge.
And that is what the Nigerians are reacting about.
But whatever it is, it's just borrowing the Vice President's statement. It's a fantastic innovation. And that's a good one, really, coming from Nigeria and having to really join the league of countries that are, having electric cars. That's a good innovation. That's really great.
Let's not forget that it's an assemblage. And,
assemblage and cost-effective production so that it is affordable. But there's no taking it away from Nigerians. Just only last week, there was also the Made in Nigeria cell phone, you remember, that was presented to the President Muhammad Buhari.
Mm-hmm.
So, if we put our noses to the grinding stone, we can be very innovative.
You can get them back. Remember in those days, 80s and before 80s, there were so many assembly plants in Nigeria. Lagos, Kano, Bauchi, Kaduna, all these cars who rode in Nigeria were assembled in this country. But over the years, they disappeared.
Volkswagen in Lagos, Steyr in Bauchi. Yes. And Anamco, was it Anamco in Anambra?
Yes.
All right.
You know, if that had been sustained, you know, by now people would have started the remanufacturing of cars by themselves. You know, because when you assemble, you're able to study the components, you know, the parts of the cars. And of course, if a Jakarta State Complex, you know, was also working, that would have been also assisted Nigeria in terms of fabricating or molding some of the car engine parts, like piston and rings, metal, and what have you. These are the real components of an engine of a car. Right? So
yes, I agree with you. You see, when you assemble, you import what is called CKD. Component parts is imported, then you assemble them here. But even when we were assembling auto in Nigeria, part of the program was that some of the parts, like the glass, some flat sheet metal, will be produced locally from Ajaokuta, but unfortunately, those did not quite materialize. But a lot of the plastics components were also byproducts from our petrochemical car industry.
Roadside mechanics also assemble. They do your engine. They can rework your engine. They can overhaul your engine. Even the one we call panel beaters, they can assemble a car anywhere, any day, anytime. Because of course they already have an understanding of the parts of cars. You know, the panel beaters, for instance, for the body of the car, and for the engine, the roadside mechanics can do anything with the engine in terms of assemblage, in terms of, you know, dismantling. And
well,
of course,
trust Nigerians now. We are good at almost everything, just for us to harness or for the government to harness that, and let's get going. All the same now, we thank you so much, Adebayo, for coming on this program this morning. Tomorrow is going to be another day. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. We're reaching you from the Nigerian Television Authority, and I will now take a break. The program continues in a while. Stay with us.
As Oni of Ife, as someone who cares about the well-being and safety of our people, it's time for each and every one of us to realize that COVID-19 is real and it has killed millions of people around the world. Scientists have developed this vaccine. The vaccine is safe for everyone and it contains no microchip, nor can it alter our DNA. However, we must continue to stay safe and stay clean, wear face masks, clean our hands on a regular basis, and try as much as possible to avoid a very large crowd and gathering. For those who choose to be vaccinated, it will go a long way in protecting yourself and your loved ones from COVID-19.
Nigerian youths are about the greatest asset the country has at the moment. It is therefore not surprising that the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari is strategically responding to the yearnings of the youth through multiple projects and programs. Youth entrepreneurship support years by Bank of Industry, the Youth Investment Fund by the CBN, and several other conditional cash transfer programs. Recruitment of 774,000 social workers, majority of whom are youths, and so many other projects that are beneficial to youths directly or indirectly. If the administration can do all this, definitely with a degree of patience and time, it can achieve more. Nigerian youths must come together to say no to terrorism, no to vandalism, and no to all disruptive tendencies. Hashtag Youth for Greater Nigeria. Pacifying the youths, unifying the nation. The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
The much anticipated UEFA Euro 2021 is finally here. Can Portugal defend the title they won 4 years ago as they face world champions France, Europe giants Germany, Spain, Italy and England? Catch all the action via live transmission, in-depth studio analysis, fixtures, results, updates, and lots more on NTA, Africa's largest TV network. For sponsorship and advert placement, contact Bola on 080-37-044-286 or Idris on 080-34-633-644. This broadcast is proudly brought to you by NTA in partnership with Media Business Solutions, MBS Sports.
You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you from the NTA. Our focus is on managing inflation in Nigeria, and it's a prompt for our conversation this morning. Here is a background report put together by Oyemi Ajayi.
According to the Consumer Price Index report recently released by the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, Nigeria's inflation rate stood at 18.12% in April 2021, indicating the first decline in headline inflation in about 20 months. The inflation dropped by 1.01% in May to 17.93%. This is set to represent a 0.05% point decline when compared to 18.17% recorded in March 2021. This surely has serious effect on the growth and development of the Nigerian economy. Price instability becomes inevitable, resulting to increase in food prices aside the reduction in the value of the naira currency, just to mention a few. Part of the effect is the eventual loss of jobs by many. As a way of managing inflation in Nigeria, experts suggested government's use of wage and price controls, but it is believed that these will cause recession and job losses. Also, employment of contractionary monetary policy by reducing the money supply within an economy via decreased bond prices and increased interest rates, amongst others. Some have also suggested direct or indirect reduction in the money supply through policies that encourage reduction in money supply. Other suggestions include full operation of infrastructural facilities to attract more investors, both foreigners and locally. Analysts insist fiscal policy and wage controls will also help manage inflation if properly utilized. How far has Nigeria gone in ensuring that the country exits inflation, and what else can be done to achieve this? These are questions for guests already seated in the studio.
And to discuss the topic, first let me introduce here in the studio Professor Ahmed Bawa Bello, a professor of accounting at Modibo Adamawa University, Yola. We're glad to have you this morning, sir.
Good morning. It's a pleasure having me.
All right, and also with us here in Abuja studio is a regular guest, Ni Akinsiju, investment and financial analyst. It's always a pleasure to have you.
My pleasure as always. Thank you for having me.
And also joining us via Zoom is Professor Ken Ife, a development economist. Thank you for joining us. He's joining us from... No, he's coming now. He's coming in. Professor, welcome.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you so much. Thank you so very much.
Well, gentlemen, it's a pleasure indeed to have you join us this morning. And models of inflation have evolved over time. And economists like you have actually become more knowledgeable when it comes to the issue of inflation. In Nigeria here, monetary and fiscal policies plus other measures have been put in place to cushion the effect of inflation in the country. But first of all, let's begin with Ken Ife. How have these policies and measures impacted on the current inflationary pressure that we are currently experiencing in Nigeria?
Well, what I would say is that the insecurity, the current level of insecurity in the country has overshadowed every other policy. And, people are not even patient. They don't want to listen to any other thing. It's just the pervasive impact of insecurity on all factors of production and all means of exchange. We've seen that. But when you come to the inflation itself, there are two areas that you look at in inflation. Money supply is traditionally always there to to manage inflation. It's used to be the most. But in the context of what we are seeing in Nigeria today, there are very, very big questions about the extent to which monetary policy can actually deal with what we see to be largely structural issues. Now, let's unpack that. The monetary aspect is domestic money supply, which is okay, but then where are you sending that money to? You send that through the banking and financial system, and then it gets into the hands of investors and domestic people. But over 100 million Nigerians are in poverty. Over 80 million are below poverty line. The banks are not actually lending to that real sector. So if you go and focus on playing with interest rates and base rates and all that, who are you actually targeting? So I put that by the side. The other element of money supply that comes in is forex, foreign exchange supply into our system. Now, the factors that affect that are exogenous to our system. They have to do with the crude production volume, the crude price prevailing, and 90% of that forex are dependent on that crude. And we have very little control on that. And you can see what really happens once there's shortage of forex. You can see people running to the other side to get money from black market, and then they import at high cost and they pass through straight away that inflation to the consumers. But that is not by any means the only issue. We have so many hostages to this fortune that we have look at importing petroleum products. Over 30% of that our receipt goes away again to go and transport it outside, pay for it to be processed, and then come back here, and then you have subsidy on it. So you can see competition on that same forex that we have. Okay. Now come to the other side, structural factors. Agriculture is structural. And we know that when you look at the inflation aggregates, agriculture looms very large because over 23% is the farm produce element of it. Then you know that power is a very important structural element. The prices of power, the shortage of power, the damage it does to the industry, the input cost that it pushes up, and then not to talk of the tariff that's gone up. People are now seeing double the tariff on electricity. And these are people who are producing and providing services. They are seeing double an increase, 100% increase in their bills. Then, of course, you have other issues like exchange rate. I have mentioned the impact that it has on inflation. And then you also have transport costs, which is dependent on the rising cost of PMS. And the transport cost is just unacceptable. 20% of the input cost is transport. 30% of the input cost is power. So these are much more structural issues than monetary. So that's why I'm saying that we have to watch the limit of monetary policy in tackling the current inflation that we are having right now.
Many thanks, Professor Kenife. The Buhari administration is one of the administrations that came in with not really having very good from the beginning to date. And of course, it's being compounded by, so many factors. He has mentioned some of them. And this includes the falling oil prices. And of course, you find the pandemic here. You find, the recessions, two of them that came in, were able to get out of it. And the insecurity, which is really hard, hitting hard on the economy. We're trying to manage the inflation. All these have just snowballed into a very serious problem for the common man at home. Trying to buy, daily needs becomes a problem. What, in your opinion, would be a major solution to this problem?
Thank you very much. I think Prof. Ken had been able to highlight some of the issues, at play. But I think more than that is to zero in on the major driver of inflation, as it were, either historically or in contemporary times in Nigeria, is our food baskets. In 2019, it was estimated that household expenditure, food took about 56.6% of household expenditure. And the World Bank report recently estimated 60%, of food expenditure. So what that translates to is once the prices of foods are on the increase, inflation would also increase. So it's a direct relationship, as it were. So the whole focus will be on how to drive more food production, and of course, in doing that, you also see inflation falling. In the two consecutive figures we've had of inflation rate, April and May, we have seen a turn, in inflation, in food inflation rate, from 22.93 thereabouts in March to 22.7 in April, and now 22.28 in what you call it in May. So with that, we are seeing a reflection of that movement, of that downward movement in the headline inflation, as it were, from the 18.17 to 18.12 and now to 17.93. It's principally driven, by the decline in food baskets. So what I'm saying essentially is there's now a need to seriously focus, on food production. That's the first and the last of it. All the essentials, all the other factors, forex, power, and all that, have, of course, implication. But if it's clear that the major burden, that drives inflation, or the major driver that increases inflation rates is food, that is where we need to put attention. And to a large extent, at the federal government level, we have seen what the federal government is doing, the Ministry of Agriculture is doing, the central bank is doing with the Anchor Borrowers program and all that. And in fact, the protection policies of government, keeping imported foods away from Nigeria, and of course, trying to carry along the local farmers and all that. So if the federal government is doing so much, I think there's a need for the subnationals, to be involved in this thing as a deliberate policy, of states at their level. And then more than that, I think the local governments have been out of the loop, in the whole agricultural value chain, as it were. The local governments areas are the tier of government that are closest, to the people, one. And you have about 450 local governments that are rural-based local governments. I think in whatever we are doing, there is a need to go through the local governments. There are agricultural departments in these local governments, and there are supervisors for agriculture too. But I wonder the kind of work they are doing, because we don't get to see what the local government is doing in the first time. In fact, that type of government, we have said it time and again, that is non-existent. And the truth is that until we structure either our political or economic or however structure we are looking at it, without the functionality of the local government, we will still be grasping, at non-issues. So in correcting what we have now, one, the issue, the focus, of course, must be on what to do to boost food production. And in doing that, the local government must be of essence.
How do you want the states to come into this? So when we talk about the local government, well, of course, they're there, but they're still trying to get their feet, trying to get the independence they require, and then have everything to them. So we can at least excuse them for a while, but the states have there, you mentioned them. And how do you want the states to come into this? Since the federal government is doing a lot through the CBN.
Well, if the states are replicating what what the federal government is doing. You know, it would impact, of course, it will be at a lower level, you know, but it will still impact the states. Don't forget that is the configuration, I mean, it's the collective of the state that makes the nation, you know. So if you have the states doing these things at different level, one, you have the opportunity of specialization. You know, there are states that are naturally inclined towards certain agricultural products. So if they focus on those special inclination, you know, it would, of course, as a collective, bring more food to the table, as it were, at a cheaper rate, you know. But the local government is still essential to this. The state can still not do anything without the local government. The federal government can still not do much without the local government. So it's, the advocacy is to energize the local government to play a role in what we are talking about.
Yeah, well, actually, the local government aspect as we brought in here is very, very essential. But as it were, we have seen that our council areas are somehow in comatose for a while now, knowing, of course, the reasons because of the inability of state governors to actually allow the local governments to exist as a tier of government in terms of practical existence, you know, being able to be alive to their responsibility as council areas of this country. Right, thanks. Let's go to Professor Ahmed Bawabelo. A number of issues have been raised, you know, concerning the inflationary pressure that we have currently in the country. There are issues of structural elements like agriculture, power, manufacturing, and what have you. But I also like you to come from this angle. There's a close link, you know, between money supply and inflation. Now, what should be the mechanisms for controlling money supply in order to cushion the effect of inflation in a nation like Nigeria?
Well, before we go into that, as a rider to what Mustani said, you need synchronization of policies between the federal, state, and the local government. Whether the state government allow the local government operate or not. Once there is synchronization of policies, planning, you have economic recovery growth plan, state governments or state planning commission or ministry for planning, budget and planning should follow from the economic recovery growth plan of the federal government. As he is saying, the major focus should be agriculture. So which means that all the states where possible, except for those that may not have adequate land for agriculture, should follow the line of agriculture in their own way. In order to avoid duplication of effort, they should see what the federal government is doing so that they should do something different. They should guide the local government in also doing that. So if you come back to the question that you asked, while we'll put it theoretically that what you need to control money supply. That is the responsibility of the central bank governor, central bank. And I believe they are doing their best by controlling the monetary policy rate, which is the interest rate, you know, by increasing or decreasing. One thing that I became happy was the reduction in the interest rate for fixed deposit, treasury bills, and others. The government was providing incentive for people not to invest. By the time you put your treasury bills at 13, 14%, people would not be motivated to invest. Rather, the money that they have obtained, legitimately or otherwise, will now be taken again for investment. So by bringing down, it would now force people to go for investment. So theoretically, if you increase your interest rate, that will discourage people from borrowing. Also, the cash reserve ratio will now be increased so that money will not be available to the banks. But the government, over time, including this government, they've been doing that. So there is fundamental thing that we need as a people and as Nigerians. We need to face realities. We need to understand that certain things are bound to happen. So we cannot escape from that. Prior to now, the price of agricultural product, their prices were low. For the reason that we import rice, we import most of these things. So because of the cost of production out of the country is low,
for sure, after import, the price will be much lower than what we're having. But we cannot continue to import. We have to take action, which the government has taken now, by stopping the importation of rice and other commodities. Naturally, you expect that these things will grow. So it's only that we need to have that patience to wait, to allow for the price of agricultural product to grow to an equilibrium level, such that farmers will be able to invest even without the support of government, or rather without subsidy, so that they will recover from the sales of the product. I was of the opinion that, look, if a price of rice should go to 50,000 naira per bag, what's the problem? If you have problem, go back to farm. The farmer will be willing to do that, and because he's going to make profit, that will move people back to the farm, and it has its own multiplier effect. If we have, say, 10 million people in the farm, because the price of agricultural product is good, it means that 20 million, 10 more million people will now move to farming. And therefore, the demand for tractors will increase, the demand for input for agriculture will increase, and vice versa, you now have multiplier effect on that. So really, we don't expect that when we are coming out of COVID-19, and we will not have the kind of inflation that we're having. It's natural. It's normal to have that. You don't expect that with the kind of insecurity that we have in this country, that you cannot have the kind of inflation that we're having. Virtually, if you go to the Northeast, you cannot move out of the local government headquarters for like 10 kilometers. It's a problem because you either be kidnapped or you'll be killed, or whatever, on so many things. So as a result of that, people don't go to farm. What do you expect? Natural increase in price. So whatever policies that you have taken theoretically to control the volume of money into circulation. Then another issue is our mindset, our kind of people. Whatever policy that the government is bringing, people try to beat that policy. I am sure the president of the country and the CBN governor, the closest thing that is at their heart, there are two things. That is to control the exchange rate and to encourage agriculture. But if you go down practically, it needs to be regulated, it needs to be checked properly, in the sense that the loans they were giving, or they are giving, facilities that are being provided to improve agriculture, you'll be surprised. It doesn't get to the farmers. So as a result, these people are not, the people that are collecting, are not using it for that purpose. What are they going to use it? They are using it for consumption. And by the time you have too much money in circulation, what is supposed to be channeled through a productive purpose is being used for consumption, naturally the price will have to go on. So therefore, there is need, in fact, if you allow me to say that, there is need for CBN to appoint auditors to undertake forensic audit on the disbursement that have been made in order to support agriculture. Also, there is need to also check even the money that has been provided to provide financial support to medium and small scale industries. These people at the grassroots don't get it. When you go, they will celebrate 5, 6 people after the fanfare, that's all. The money doesn't get there, and it's now accumulated in one place. What is the result? Naturally, you see that. And that is why you see the urban inflation is at almost all the time higher than the rural inflation. The same thing also, if you look at the policy now, I don't want to be a person that is not being optimistic, but the way this government is defending the value of our naira, I am afraid what is going to happen if the governor is not there and we have a new government. We pray that we have that. And it is because, as I said, our attitude. People go for dollar not because they want to import or they want to process for export. No. They want dollar to just keep. So now dollar is becoming product. People are buying product, whatever it is. Change the official rate of dollar to 500 naira per dollar. The black market rate would shoot to 700. Move official rate to 700. It will still move to 900 because people want to exploit the others. So if we don't have a change of mindset, and it's rather unfortunate, even our elites, for they exploit based on the circumstances they have, they found themselves. Look at the price of cement. At the point in time, it was 2,500, 2,200. All of a sudden, it moved up to 3,000. We were told that they were carrying maintenance here and there. But what happened? Even after the maintenance, the price of cement per bag is over 4,000 naira now. So it's exploitation. Our people are exploiting us. Anybody that has the opportunity, instead of having to be patriotic to see how we are going to change the country, rather, we are trying to exploit the system. Therefore, there has to be a practical check on ground to see that we fight corruption. We see that in every aspect of it, we fight it. We need to be realistic. As I was saying, we were discussing outside this place. You say that you are paying a director of finance, director procurement, 150,000, 250,000. Theoretically, they will tell you that it's not a justification for you to be corrupt. But I myself, and any other person, we know by the time we put the kind of dress in you, on you as a director, anything, we know that your salary cannot afford that. By the time we go to your house, we know the kind of house you live in. Your salary cannot afford that. And everyone knows that. And we say that we are fighting corruption. It's not possible. And one man cannot fight corruption. We have to do it. So fundamentally, some of these economic things, no matter what you do, theoretically, as long as our kind of mindset, it is what it is, we are not going to go anywhere. Prof, so therefore, there is need for reorientation of our people. We need to change, our mindset need to be changed. We need to be patriotic so that whatever government is doing, we need to accept that. We need to take it in good faith and also follow to the letter.
Prof, you have actually expanded this conversation, because bringing in corruption and all of that. But again, I want to believe in what you're saying with respect to the fact that the inflation is taking place in Nigeria, and all the issues that you raised are also of concern because, of course, we have to live and exist as human beings. Yeah. And the World Bank just said that we need critical reforms to this inflation, and of course accelerate the recovery that we're talking about, the economic recovery we're talking about. From all you have said, it does appear that whatever policy or measures being put in place by government may not necessarily work.
The theoretical aspect. So what I'm saying, we need to be practical now. We need to come out. All right, as I'm still saying, I rendered my advice to one. We need to be productive. We need to make our people productive. I gave you an example to say that part of the practical thing that I have in my head is that, look, if, for example, we have a state with about 30,000 staff in the payroll, and you know that you can make do with 5,000. So why should you keep the remaining 25,000? We are not saying that sack 25,000. But in being creative, what you do is, all right, ask 25,000, go back home, stay at home, we'll be paying you salary. Without doing anything, just go and stay for 5 months. After 5 months, by rank, say for example, we say director. A director, we need you to give us 10 bags of rice in a year. Since you are at home sitting down doing nothing, we need 10 bags of rice. And so on and so forth based on the rank. So if the director is not willing to provide 10 bags of rice, then we will now go to the public. Who is willing to give us 10 bags of rice and will be paying him the salary of equivalent to that of director? I believe there will be many that will be willing to do that. So, and therefore the director will have no option after receiving 5 months free salary. We're asking you to bring only 10 bags of rice. You have to accept that. So by the time we have that, which means we are making you productive, two things will happen. It's either you are going to buy 10 bags of rice and bring to us, or you are going to farm 10 bags of rice and bring to us. In any way, we have succeeded in reducing your salary. If otherwise, we say that we are going to reduce the salaries of directors by 10 bags of rice, even as a down, I am complaining that the salary is not enough for a director. We are saying we are going to do, NLC will not allow that to happen. But if I say sit down doing nothing, just give me 10 bags of rice, which means I'm making you productive. After a year, I can increase that to 20. If you are not willing to, let me ask the general public, who is willing to give me 20 bags, I will give you his salary. So eventually, we will come to a level that will say that, okay, you give us the rice, the number of bags of rice equivalent to your salary, which means you are now being productive. So without productivity, we'll still be having, we like free money. There are very hardworking Nigerians. By the time you go out, go to any street in Lagos, Port Harcourt, and others, you see people working hard to earn. But come to others. You have significant number of people that don't do anything. They like free money. Give somebody 10,000 naira, he will look at it as if it's nothing. But for me, as I always say, when I look at 10,000 naira, I don't look at it. I look at what 10,000 naira will do. I am building a house. How many blocks will I get from 10,000 naira? So by the time people feel that such kind of money is nothing, and by the time we also continue, sorry to say, politicians continue to dash money, people will continue to be lazy and people will continue to be dependent on the government.
Professor Ba, we'll come back to these critical issues later on. It seems as if there are some innovations and initiatives you have in your head which you think could be put forward to, managers of our economy and indeed Nigerians in order to see to it that we manage the inflation and then manage our country well. Let's cross over to Professor Kennifer. You've had the Prof speak about critical ways of trying to get out of the inflation and get us through. You also had Nia Kinseju providing some solutions to that. What would you add to what they say in trying to find a solution to this inflation and making Nigerians more productive, keeping in mind that we cannot continue the way we are continuing in order to get to the promised land?
Now let's get down to business. If you look at the inflation, with the food sub-basket index hanging on 22.72 and the core index is 12.74, there is a gap of 10%. Now that gap of 10%, I'll tell you where it goes to. The actual food sub-basket index has two components. One is the processed food and the other one is farm produce. The processed food is also part of the core inflation because the core inflation is all inflation indices minus farm produce. So it is actually the farm produce that is dragging the country and inflation by a whole margin of 10%. So let's get down to the roots now. There are two areas, the demand side and the supply side of the farm produce. Before we get into those two, let's locate central bank and what it has done. What central bank has done is to provide the structure and the foundation for a new commercial agriculture system in Nigeria. It has been a complete transformation of our agricultural system. If you remember what it looked like in 2010, 11, 12. Now, what has happened is this. The subsistence agriculture we have known for years with antiquated technology and people are carrying all of that. All of that have gone. With digital access to finance, they've all gone. What we have is that they transformed our commercial farmers to our subsistence farmers to commercial outgrowers, modernized, because when you look at the Anchor Borrowers program, it's giving them hybrid seeds, all the inputs, mechanization services, all the way to extension services, fertilizer that is fit for purpose, herbicides, insecticides, and all of that, organized with anchors. We have production companies, processing companies that act as anchors. We have retail chain, but we have also exporters. Now, the export one is the one we need to pay a lot of attention to because that will bring the foreign exchange and balance our misery at the forex area. Let's come down to the two these things. One, on the demand side of our agriculture, what we have is this: Nigeria is feeding over 300 million people when our population is 200 million and 8 million. This is because we are actually feeding the Niger Republic, the Mali, the Burkina Faso, a part of Benin, part of northern Cameroon. These people are taking our food, and there's nothing you can do about that, because they are protected by ECOWAS Treaty of free movements of primary produce without tax, and they're not even paying for this in export with dollars. They're paying for it in naira. They're settling with naira. Now, number two in this demand side is this: 5 years ago, 1 naira was buying 3 sefa. Now, 1 naira is buying 1.2 sefa, which means that in the eyes of the francophone countries surrounding us, our money has been devalued by over 67%. So there's no incentive for them to grow anything anymore. Buy Nigerian produce, devalue it, and send them back to Nigeria 3 or 4 months later and sell it at 100% of the price. So these are some of the issues. You can't run away with those. They are not going to go away soon. But now turn to the supply side and see what else can we do, given what the insecurity situation across the 6 geopolitical zones have brought to us. One of our response has been increased mechanization, which is Anko Browa bringing in, which is good, which means in the limited agroecological footprint, we can still intensify and produce twice more. Then there are other things that has done: high yield, seeds and all of that, doubling and tripling our produce, our production, productivity. You have one ton per hectare of cotton going up to 75 tons, all that stuff. And then cassava doubling, tripling from 18 tons to 50 tons. So all of that. But then let's look critically at what else could be done. Because I'm concerned that while CBN is doing all of this and has transformed 3 million farmers to commercial farmers, we have 44 million MSMEs in this country. So how do you get access to finance to all the others? So we need to not only deal with moving money to the market, because in the end of the day, they have to be able to go to the market to get their loan for the long term. But CBN has also tried to do a lot of things to push more money into the market space so that the banks are able to lend. But we need to do more on sustainability. How do you get the state governments, the local governments to engage, and more big private sector to get in, so that they can drive the program if the CBN decides to exit this program? And then that is where we connect with all the things my colleagues are saying. There are 774 local governments in Nigeria. 1,000 hectares per local government means we can bring 774,000 hectares into production within a year. What are they going to produce it on? They can produce it on natural products that they have the greatest advantage. And the connection can now be made with NEPC. I've spoken to the CEO of NEPC. I said, make this link. Let's have export anchors so that your one product the local government can sit in. Now you can now drive the local governments that are coming in with 1,000 to some of the export products or produce or even cassava, whatever it is that they can produce efficiently. You can make that link so you have a solid base of the pyramid producing for our exports. And it is not rocket science, but look at the figures. If normally between 150,000 naira to 500,000 naira is what we lend per hectare, depending on the crop. So let's take an average of 200,000 naira per hectare. Now that means that if you use 200,000 naira per hectare, one local government borrows 200 million to do 1,000 hectares. That is not much money. The whole 774 local governments will borrow 154 billion naira to do 1,000 hectares per local government. That is 774,000 hectares. That is still normal compared to what we are lending right now. But you have to use that to get them in. Now, I've spoken to so many governors about why are they not investing in agriculture. And you know what they said to me? One, that they don't want to guarantee loan, and then the farmers will run away because it's guaranteed by the state. Number two, they don't have the borrowing headroom to enable them bring the ISPO to support their borrowing from the central bank. Now, these reasons are legitimate. They are legitimate. So what I did for one of the governors is to give him a formula that shows how you can use, because every government, this 774,000 hectares, we have more than that. We have almost 1 million hectares owned by state governments that have been acquired. So what I did for one state government is to say, okay, You have 30,000 hectares that already been acquired by you, used for a variety of things. Let's get the farmers to go in there, 1 man, 1 hectare, 1 farmer, 1 hectare, so that you don't need to guarantee anybody's loan. So they will borrow under anchor borrowers, and then they have their money, and you just sit there and maybe collect rent and then give them some infrastructure. So it is so, and CBN likes the program that I drew up. So it is so easy to get states to line up to use their assets to engage the farmers in the value chain without having to need any ISPO, without having to guarantee anybody's loan, because they are the obligor. The farmers are the obligor under that arrangement. And the CBN lends because they have the BVN, biometric bank verification, and they also have the satellite coordinates of those 1 hectare. So it's win-win for everybody. And then when the local government does the same or follows on that bandwagon, they are responding to export promotion drive. One product, one state. And it will be transformation in this country. This agriculture will solve the problem, but we must hit the ground running and make sure there's sustainability across the entire spectrum. So that if the CBN decides, maybe because of a new leadership or whatever, to exit this development finance, we don't come crashing down.
That's an elaborate analysis of what can be done. And from all we have said this morning, everything tilts towards agriculture, how to revamp agriculture, how to take agriculture to the next level. But from Ken Ife's explanation, CBN has done a great deal of job in terms of ensuring that we lift agriculture from where it was not to where it should be. And from all indications, agriculture has really grown, you know, with time. Ni, you were the first to mention the issue of the subnationals being part of the package in terms of keying into the policies of federal government with respect to this issue of inflation in the country. Now, what are other formats? Ken has just given us a format, you know, whereby a state government can engage farmers without actually being responsible for the loans they're going to, you know, get from the Central Bank of Nigeria. Now, what other form of or other approach that could be used to assure that agriculture is welcomed by state governments who could now, you know, take a serious part in ensuring that all local government areas in states are now part of the agricultural package that we're talking about? Because from all you have explained this morning, the issue is hinged on agriculture, because of course there's a surge in demand for agricultural produce, and that is why in the urban areas we have a higher inflation rate.
There will be a surge. Don't also forget that our population is increasing. As Prof noted, the whole of the West African sub-region is dependent on the Nigerian food market, as it were. But again, Nigeria has a capacity to feed the whole of the West African region. In fact, it should be an incentive, you know, for our farmers, as it were, because of course, the more the demand, you know, you expect supply to start running after demand until you get that get to that equilibrium level. So for me, I don't see that as a challenge. What is challenging is how do we calibrate the system, you know, to meet up with this demand. It is a good economic situation when you have high demand. It means that there is a need for higher supply, you know, and of course when supply meets demand, it increases wealth for whoever the stakeholders are in the environment. Now going forward, the subnationals are so important in this chain, as it were, because by constitutional provisions, they are the owners, they are the custodians of land. In fact, what the federal government and the CBN are doing is peripheral engagements. The core of engagement should be at the level of the subnational, because the federal government does not own specific land within the subnational space. So it's a state government that can determine the kind of land it wants and what it wants to do with it, you know. And so to that extent, I think those, I mean, that I will be taking from Prof's recommendation that we should also start having farm estates, you know, so delineated by state governments, and say, okay, in this part of my state, this is what I want to use it for. agriculture. And for this agricultural venture, I want this kind of produce, to be produced, to be farmed on this land, And of course, you give that out at concessionary level. Again, the local government comes into consideration here. We cannot run away from it. And I think there should be a strong advocacy, on what the role of the local government. If as we are sitting without on a structure that lacks foundation. The local government is supposed to be a foundation. In fact, not even a local government, the world. The smaller the unit that we can engage with, geographically and demographically, the better for us. So if you have all equipments, all incentives in place, without extension workers, people with higher level of enlightenment that can engage the farmers we are talking about, we won't be able to go anywhere. And who relates with the farmers at that level? Today we are talking of less than 40,000 extension workers, engaging with how many farmers? And of course, we are saying there are still a lot of potentials farmers out there. The Anchor program has been able to give us a register of 3-point-something million farmers. I know, because we are yet to fully mechanized, we'll be using more hands in the farm, so we need more farmers, And to do that, you need people that can also, by participatory engagement, give the farmers direction, give the farmers, updates, enlightenment on contemporary modern ways of farming. Those are extension workers. And you cannot have extension workers effectively on ground without the involvement of the local governments. You are posting extension workers from Abuja to my village in Idome, to my village somewhere in Ondo State. They don't know anywhere. It's like sending somebody to a strange land, does not understand the culture, does not understand the attitude, of the people, does not even understand the history of farming in that area. So you need someone who have direct engagements, who have a historical linkage, with the land, to be able to effectively engage people and, of course, encourage people to do more farming. So for me, the whole thing is not even about mechanization. If we don't have the resources to mechanize, because it's about big money, we have the people. So why don't we properly engage the people in a way that they are better informed to use modern ways of farming to produce more?
Well, thank you, Nia Akinseju, for that insight. But I think lest we dwell so much on agriculture, Professor Bauer, let's look at other aspects of inflation. It's normally generally referred to as, a situation where, fewer goods normally chase a lot of money in the market. That's primarily...
So many money, but fewer goods.
Yeah. But when we look at
as still a rider, I get your point.
I just wanted to add a little. That is talking about other factors that causes this inflation, this kind of trend.
Yeah.
When you look at power supply in this country, that's one great factor. When you look at the prices of, petroleum products, especially for transportation of things and goods and services, when these products have been produced, all this add up to the price at the end of the day. And there you find it going higher. We were discussing yesterday. We say, okay, there are lots of things in the market. And people say there is no money. Now, how comes that you find out today that there is inflation, which means there is not much money in the market, and there are enough goods, but still the prices are high?
Yeah, it still gets back to what I said earlier, corruption. But as a rider let me make a comment on the comment Annie made with respect to the opportunities of demand. Really, the consumption from Mali, Niger, Chad, and others is really opportunity. It's a good thing for them to demand. For the value of our currency is lower than theirs, is also a good thing. That is what we want. In fact, that is one of the essence of devaluation of currency in order to attract people to come and buy from you. So by the time the demand is there, it means that people will be engaged to produce more. It's an incentive to the country. All that is required now is for us to see how we are going to produce more. Going back now to what you have said, what is going to these countries is not only the farm produce, but including the finished goods. If you see the consumption of what is going, the finished product that is going to is significant. So it's also good and it's an incentive. Inflation, we are saying that there is no money, products are there, and things are going up. Yes. When people get easy money, they don't mind how they spend the money. And also, as I've said earlier also, our attitude to foreign product, we need to encourage consumption of locally manufactured product. So when you relate to, again, the price of petroleum and other infrastructure, you can cumulatively put them together as a cost of production. These are the items that drive cost of production high. And normally, one of the major determinants of price in price system is the cost of production. You cannot sell below your cost of production. And naturally, when a tariff, electricity tariff is going up, a petroleum product is going up, you have no option. And also, the system that we have, we need to also understand the reality here again, that you don't expect the price of PMS to come down any soon, except until when we start producing what we can consume 100% locally. Also, the government in advance should put also policies and issues on ground to check the exploitation so that we don't have one or two private refineries and we now come to have a repeat of what is happening with cement, such that they will now have the monopoly and at any time they will just increase the price of PMS. So, but as it is, it's natural, because when people buy dollar and keep, because the money they get is through corruption. So the price of dollar will naturally keep on increasing. And that is what you need to import some of your own PMS. You export PMS on dollar, you import PMS on dollar, the value of your currency is decreasing. You don't expect anything. There has to be increase in the PMS. That is why there has to be subsidy. Let me give you an example, a scenario. Supposing you are buying a liter at $1 and the exchange rate is 100 naira. So the person that is importing now has to use 200 naira as a result of devaluation. Previously, when he is importing at $1, at 100 naira, he will sell at 120. But now the dollar is moving to 200 naira. So he will still use $1. So he has to get 200 naira to get $1 in order to import fuel. By the time he's bringing it here, assuming no other cost, he's bringing it at 200 naira. Do you expect him to sell at less than 200 naira? Naturally, the price has to go up. So, but if we say that he must sell at 100 naira, it means the government must subsidize. So also, if the exchange rate is going to 300 naira, so also the PMS must go beyond 300, or the government must subsidize. So naturally, these are the so, and other ease of doing business, apart from cost of production, that needs to be checked. Ensure that we produce what we need, particularly in PMS and others. Electricity tariff, we also need to be realistic, in as much as we want it to be cheap. Also, we need to be realistic. Those that are also producing or generating the electricity needs to make some margin. So we need to be realistic and balance the equation. Ease of doing business is still, again, corruption is a part of it. As again, you cannot run away from it. If you have a trailer load of onions from Maiduguri to Lagos, for instance, if the cost of transportation is 150,000 naira, so what the driver is going to spend on the road is not going to be less than 50,000 naira. That is additional cost as a result of the checkpoints that he's going to settle his way before he gets to Lagos. Without the checkpoint again, say you are banning, you are going to bring insecurity again. The cost again of insecurity is going to be much more than that. And therefore, it is better with the checkpoint. And that is included. But if we're able to check that, things will be easy. If you want to, again, get money, sorry to say, but it's a reality. Whatever that you want to get, whatever the policy is going to, you really have to buy your way out. That is the stark reality, some of these things. So if this thing is checked, whatever that we are going to do, we are going to say, if we don't fight the corruption seriously, we get realistic, we understand the data. We are discussing out of this studio on practical ways to really fight corruption. But that is not the subject of discussion now.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Actually, you have laid emphasis on corruption, and it's actually, biting hard and making contributions to the inflationary pressure that we have in the country. Now, let's return to Professor Ken Ife, whom I understand might be leaving us in a moment from now. But I'd like to speak to some key issues before you leave. Experts have suggested periodic reconstitution of a country's inflation basket to capture the rapidly changing consumption patterns. And some experts also believe that wage control can help in cushioning the effect of inflation in the country. If that is true, is it a practicable possibility in our circumstance?
I have no objection. I have nothing against expanding the basket. But I think we probably will be avoiding the real task that we have to confront, that we have to confront, and which is we've dealt extensively with the agriculture. So at least we now know what agriculture can do and what we can do to temper that. But we haven't dealt in greater detail what has to happen to power, and then what has to happen to fuel cost that is pushing the transportation cost. And if you remember in 2016-17, when the central bank had so much problem with macroprudential measures and capital account control measures, and three consecutive drops on exchange the exchange rate and all of that, they turned to demand management by blacklisting 34 items, and that quickly brought us back to normal, because when you dealt with that, then it means that it had to push resources to deal with backward integration fallout from restricting those 34 items. And that's where you saw a lot of resources coming into the real sector and agriculture in particular, because of the impact of the backward integration agenda to deal with the exclusion of those 34 items. I think that list has to increase. That has to increase, because that is why I kept pointing my finger to petroleum subsidy and petroleum product importation. I keep pushing that. Look at 112 billion last month couldn't be given to governors to increase at least their receipt by about 3 billion each, because it's gone on subsidy. And we're going to have to tackle this, because what is hemorrhaging the forex that we get. And we're going to do something. You can't have 75 licenses out there, and then you don't have another Dangote and other guys to come in to support them. So that money could have set up 3 modular refineries, money 1 month. That means on the average, 100 billion a month goes on subsidy. That means 100 billion extra money that the states would have needed to put into agriculture, to put into all other areas. That's 1.2 trillion. We can't go on like this. We just cannot go on like this. So look at both the demand and supply side, and then other structural areas that we have to do something about, and we can do something about this, without a doubt.
Thank you so much, Professor Ken Ife. We thank you so much for being part of this program this morning. We learned that you have some other engagements somewhere, so we really have to thank you very much. We hope to see you next again when something like this comes up. It's our pleasure.
Thank you.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. We will now take another break, and when we come back, we continue our discussion on managing inflation in Nigeria. Please stay back.
The much anticipated UEFA Euro 2021 is finally here. can Portugal defend the title they won 4 years ago as they face world champions France, Europe giants Germany, Spain, Italy and England? Catch all the action via live transmission, in-depth studio analysis, fixtures, results, updates, and lots more on NTA, Africa's largest TV network. For sponsorship and advert placement, contact Bola on 08037044286 or Idris on 08034633644. This broadcast is proudly brought to you by NTA in partnership with Media Business Solutions, MBS Sports.
It's the dawn of a new era on NTA's flagship program, The Sports Parliament, revitalized with lots of varieties, including feedback responses from viewers. Sports Parliament, the weekly sports show that exposes all the intrigues in the Nigerian sports sector and projects an agenda on the way forward for Nigerian sports. On NTA every Thursday at 10:30 p.m., running for 1 whole hour, discussing sports. The parliamentarians are more committed than ever to enlighten the viewers as the Sports Parliament takes it to a whole new level on the floor of the House. Keep a date with the Sports Parliament as motions are moved every Thursday on the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, with his gavel to harmonize sports resolutions. The House have it.
Yeah, welcome back. You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria, and of course we have been deliberating on issues concerning managing inflation in Nigeria. Of course, we have our professionals who have been here as our guests. Ni Akinsiju is still here. Of course, Professor Ahmed Bawabelo is with us. Ni, should there be more aggressive approach to some of the measures that you have pointed out in the course of this conversation that could be put in place to ensure that we, of course, reduce the inflation to 1 digit? Because as it is now, we're talking about 17.193%, of course, the list that we have. Right. So what are those measures or inputs that one could lay hands on with respect to ensuring that, of course, before the last quarter of this year, that would have reduced the inflation level to a minimum, reduced the inflation to a minimum level?
Well, I'm not too sure if we can achieve 1 digit by the end of this year, but we have worked this part before. It's not the first time. One, as Prof noted, this actually is also one of the fallouts of the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. And when you go into a recession, all the policy deployments that you have to undertake would naturally lead you, to what we are experiencing now in terms of the deployment and, of course, the impact on the jurisdiction itself. We went into something near exactly like this between 2016 and 2017. Near exactly in terms of figures, numbers, and all that. Headline inflation was 18.9% in 2017 January. Food inflation was 23%, while we have 22.39 now. So it's actually the same scenario, as it were. And the turning too is virtually the same thing. We are now seeing a turn. The hope now is that this turn, is it just a one-off thing or is it a trend? If it's a trend, we'll start seeing a continuous decline, just as we saw in 2017 when it turned from February 2017, and by March 2019, that's a high of 18.9, I think 18.7. was actually 11.3 March 2019. Headline inflation had fallen to 11.3. So we're looking at, of course, a continuous decline, which would have taken the figures into the single digits region. Well, again, by May and June of that year, issues of insecurity started creeping in. By then, we were engaging that. You had COVID-19 challenges coming in. So what I'm trying to say is that we have worked that part before. It's not a desperate situation, because if we're able to manage, from that high of 23% food, 18.7 headline, to a low of food, in fact, also fell to 13.45 in March 2019 from that high of 23%. So I think we can work it appropriately. The only challenge we have now would be how to increase forex funding so that access to forex is enabled at a relatively cheaper rate. I don't canvass for cheap forex. Your foreign exchange cost must be in tandem to your sourcing of foreign exchange, and of course with due consideration for local production. You don't want your foreign exchange to be so cheap, that rather than encourage local production and consumption, people would prefer imported goods, as it were, and services. So I am looking at enough relatively cheap forex that will enable increased acquisition of raw materials. But again, going forward, we talk of importing raw materials, and in the last 2 years thereabout, there have been an upsurge in the volume of raw materials imported compared to what it was between 2016 and 2017 when inflation was controlled. Now the quantum of importation of raw materials by manufacturers is becoming higher, so which negates the policy of backward integration, because in the medium to long term, what we need mostly is for self-sufficiency in our own raw material production, and create a connection, for instance, between our farm, between agriculture and manufacturing. Most my agricultural products are actually raw materials for manufacturing entities. So there's a need to create that strong linkage, between manufacturing and agriculture. And of course, I think the current government is doing much in terms of diversifying our infrastructural mix. Now we are seeing rail linking up with ports, and of course critical road infrastructure. So perhaps in the next 1 or 2 years, we'll be talking of a proper transmodal transportation system. Now, when you have logistics falling, it would impact cost of production, because of course that input, the logistic input into cost of production, will also have fallen too. So generally what I'm trying to say essentially is, I am not hopeless, because we have worked, this same government have worked this part before. But what is essential is the subnationals. It's not, yes, the revenue sharing formula that we have now favors the federal, 52%, but 48% still goes to other tiers of government. Even if there's no change yet, and I hope there will be change, but if there's no change in that formula, that 48% aspect of our national life, should be seen to be contributing something substantive to the basket. And that is why we get to know that we are living a federal system.
Oh, well, okay, thank you, Kinseju. Professor Bauer, let's look at the Finance Act 2020. Do you see this, this very act as playing some role in trying to dose the tension in the financial market and bring down or manage properly for the common man on the streets to understand that at least inflation can come down to a certain level he can appreciate?
For sure. That's what I'm saying. The policies of the government has been very, very good, even before the Financial Act 2021. the government has really tried to have maintained the system the way it is now. But many may not appreciate that because we easily discard the impact of COVID-19 and also the impact of the insecurity. If not for the commitment of the players, that's the economic team, in trying to see that these policies are brought in order to stabilize the system, situation would have been much worse. So, but with this now, we expect to see growth in the revenue generation, the IGR. Also, we expect to see some stability in the exchange rate. I don't want to be too optimistic that it will stay for a long time and at the official rate as it is, 402, 411, depending on where it is being obtained. So, but the interest rate for sure is going to stabilize. And by the time we get to September, October, we will see a drastic drop in the inflation rate. And we'll also see drastic improvement in the availability, particularly areas that borders the common man most. The rich ones, those that are more average, at whatever price they can afford, but the common man, particularly the foodstuff, because that is when the harvesting period will come, and that is when the manifestation of whatever policies that has been put in place will also be realized. So for sure, we are going to see that that improvement is going to bring ease not only to the common man, even to the financial sector as a whole, and people that are doing business for sure.
Don't you see insecurity as being, that will maybe that it may mitigate or rather hamper the attainment of this?
I am sure with the event that is unfolding now, I am sure we are going to get improvement in the system, particularly in the security system. You see, it requires commitment. Let me say, a governor, and to be specific, the governor of Adamawa State, Governor Omar Fintri, he just focused his attention on security a little. And we have seen significant drop in the crime rate. So, and by the action of the president, some utterances, although it's controversial, it has gingered the system. And also, I like the way the Inspector General of Police acted, because the aftermath of the NSAS, I was worried that the panel has been set up to investigate certain matters, like holding the arms of the security forces. By the time you are setting panel to investigate this person has done that, it means that you are constraining the security forces. Everybody, the person that is going to give command will not be willing to give command to open fire when there's problem, because already this is what is happening. But now that they have the authority, they are asked to take action. I believe we'll see a significant change. What is it? It's just, in Adamawa State, as I told you, it's just the Security Council meeting they had, and they have the attention of the governor. He did what he could, and we have seen significant drop. It has been a long time. In my university, I think about 3, 4, 5 professors were kidnapped. But there is what we call Sheila boys. You cannot enter Kekenapep. They were everywhere. So, but because of the action they have took now, everybody is now moving freely in Adamawa State. If not for such kind of action, I wouldn't know. We would have been like Katsina and Zamfara with the kind of bandit, with the way the security problem started. So the same thing now with the kind of action that we have seen that has been taken at our. So we are going to have control. So if that has happened, we are still in the planting season, particularly in the northern part of the country. It means people will still go by, will still farm, this year. I was still going to see the reward or the result of the farming.
All right, thank you very much. I just hope that whatever action being taken in Adamawa could be extended to other states, so they can borrow a leaf from what is happening with respect to insecurity that you're talking about.
That is exactly what NTA is saying. There is need for synchronization of policies. Whatever it is that federal government is doing, if the subnational governments are not replicating, you will not get the result. Whatever economic policy that is being taken at the national, if it's not replicated at the subnational level, you will not feel the impact. Exactly. The federal government is very far. Just like the president said, look, if you have, because you have failed to perform your responsibility, you are running to me to ask me that the security here and there. You are supposed to control what is there. You have your security vote. What are you doing with your security vote? You are supposed to support the state government instead of asking for state police. Yes, this is constitutional matter, but before the state police, Amotekum, is a good development. Since it has been made by law, that is what is expected to be. So the state government should provide adequate funding and ensure that they are checked. We should have that in every state. You don't need to even come as a 4 or 5 state. Well, you come 4 or 5 states, you can come in, you do whatever you do. But these are the things that are expected to be done. And we expect the governors, they have governors forum. You need to ask your colleagues, what are you doing about security? You, Adamawa state government, we have seen there was a sharp increase in crime rate, but all of a sudden we have seen a drop. What have you done? I expect that the governor of Zamfara State should relate with the governor of Adamawa State to find solution to some of this. Peer review somehow.
Thank you so much. Ni, as we are about to round off this edition of the program, what would you suggest to the CBN and of course the government to do at this very critical period that we have rising inflation, so that by the end of this year we'll have a good story to tell with respect to inflation in Nigeria?
Yeah, it's intensive at the level of the federal government's intensification of what it has been doing. Let's see more of those infrastructure coming up, because they have implication for ease and cost of doing business, and we need to put that into context. I am also impressed by the latest supplementary budget taken to the National Assembly by the federal government. About 770 billion naira thereabouts has been budgeted for acquisition of military hardware. It shows government is serious, because if you also have now there's a need for a new technological mix, in the area of military hardware, need for more drones and all that, because of the nature of insecurity that we have now. The insecurity is a major challenge. So the fact that government are taking that kind of budget to the National Assembly shows that the government is committed, knows what it's doing. I think in a long while we've never had this kind of budgetary allocation, for military acquisition of military hardware. So I think that should be done. The CBN had continually, explained its limitation using monetary policy instruments at this time. What is important now is to continue, at least in the next 2-3 months, to continue to drive the healthiness, the well-being of the structure, the productivity base, the productivity channel, consideration for power, increase in power. Thankfully, there's this strong vision on gas expansion. Year of gas now, that we are utilizing gas and all that. So all these things, when they are brought together, of course, it's not going to be one event. It's supposed to be a continuous chain of events. And we expect that at the end of the day, things would be less depressing, as it were.
Okay. Many thanks, Nia Kinseju, investment and financial analyst. It's a pleasure being with us this morning.
A pleasure as always. Thank you. For
Professor Ahmed Bawa Bello, Professor of Accounting, Modibadama University. We thank you so much for being part of this program this morning.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
And of course, a very big thank you to you out there for being part of it. You've been, you know, a good asset to us. We thank you so much. We hope you join us tomorrow on Good Morning Nigeria. I am Yusuf Narabu Usman saying stay safe.
And I am Kirian Umaya. We are live again tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock. Be a part of it. Thank you for watching.